The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
It's late on the East Coast, semi-late here in Minnesota, and the college football playoff game is still going on as I sit down to blast out this episode. This is Short Time Shots, a mostly daily look at the scores and more from in and around the sport of wrestling. I'm Jason Bryant, and since there were no scores tonight, this show is more about the more. Well, at least today it is. Back home from Virginia with the 40th annual Virginia Duels. Of those, I've been to 24 of them, and that tournament holds a special place in my heart. One of the more heart-wrenching moments came in the Old Dominion Virginia Duel, where Killian Cardinale, the starter for Old Dominion, which, as you know, is my alma mater, wrestled Patrick McCormick, a four-time state champion from my hometown of Poquoson, and the son of one of my good friends, NCAA wrestling official Mike McCormick. I once had a similar experience where Bryan LaShomb of Old Dominion wrestled Anthony Burke of UVA in a dual meet. That time, I was actually announcing the match. Burke was in my sister's graduating class back in 2004, and I'd known him since he was in middle school. With Patch, I've known that kid since he was born. Jeez. I even gave him a local shout-out at the Midlands. It's one of those cool things that when you go to the Virginia Duels and you see that type of matchup, when they'd also met twice in high school, those matches won by a point by Cardinale, I believe. Well, you've got both ODU and Virginia with local kids, and where they came from 15 years ago, that's pretty cool. Almost all those Virginia teams are better than they were 15 years ago. Obviously, Virginia Tech has carried the flag for the Commonwealth, and George Mason will be improving under Frank Beasley. But those Commonwealth teams are just getting bigger and bigger, and there's more of them coming, as two Division III schools added last week with Roanoke College, which is oddly in Salem. So if you go to Roanoke looking for Roanoke College, you're not going to find it. You're going to have to go to Salem, ask for directions at Mac and Bob's, and then find yourself to Roanoke College. They're also adding wrestling, men's and women's wrestling at Emory and Henry College, which is way down 81. It's like actually closer to where Julia Salata lives, somewhere in Bristol. Yeah, if she would actually not be a turncoat and live on the Virginia side versus the Tennessee side. Anyway, let's hope we're also not adding too many teams too fast. Remember, Strategery, right? In duels over the weekend, I'm just going to recap here since we've got nothing tonight. We had a number of duel events that went on. In Williamsport, Pennsylvania, the College of New Jersey won the 20th Bud Whitehill Duels hosted by Lycoming. In case you're wondering who the heck Bud Whitehill was, well, he was the old coach at Lycoming, which is why they've named a tournament after him. In Hampton, Virginia, Ryder won the National College Division, beating number 22 Virginia, while Division II Kutztown downed Division III Ferrum in the finals for the second straight year in the American College Division. In Louisville, the 2020 U.S. Marine Corps NWCA Multi-Divisional National Dual Meet Championships presented by Armed Software and Defense Soap, hosted by New Way. St. Cloud State extended its Division II win streak to 58, which is a record that they broke actually at the beginning of the tournament. They won their fourth dual meet championship in a row. Wartburg won its 12th overall title, and get this, beat three national champions in a single dual meet to beat Augsburg in the Division III final. When those two tangle, it's always just wackadoodle, cattywampus, whatever. Grandview's win streak is now at 85, the second longest in college wrestling history, after they lost three individual bouts over the entire weekend to capture a ninth straight national dual meet championship in the NAIA. The NJCAA featured 8 non-scholarship teams, which was won by Nassau. It was Nassau's third title, but first since 2005. The women's division split into two this year, as the NCAA and NAIA divisions kept rolling along. We got 70-something teams. Yeah, makes sense. Let's have two divisions for those respective teams. McHenry beat Simon Fraser on Criteria in the NCAA division, while Menlo beat Campbellsville to win the NAIA crown. And by the way, while Sarah Koenig of the Super 32, one of the awesome tournament directors of that tournament, pointed out in Twitter that the North Carolina women's field hockey team had last lost in like 787 days in response to TV pimping how long it had been since Clemson had lost. Well, anyway, Grandview, whatever. 2,258 days since Grandview has lost a dual meet. St. Cloud State not to be outdone. Well, yeah, technically Grandview's outdone them. St. Cloud State last lost 1,094 days ago. You noticed I said non-scholarship with the NJCAA portion of the national duels. Well, you'd be quite punctilious in assuming that. Well, yeah, okay, everybody knows that movie reference. Well, in Miami, Oklahoma, Clackamas won the NJCAA coaches duels by beating Iowa Western 38-15 in the finals. This was basically the national duels for the scholarship division. I'm not quite sure what the deal was with that, but I'm sure I'll figure it out one of these days. Clackamas beat Iowa Lakes, top-ranked but fourth-seeded Western Wyoming. They opened with a win over Colby before beating Iowa Western on the weekend. Yeah, beating Iowa Western in the finals is what I really meant to say. Iowa Central beat host Northeastern Oklahoma A&M, or NEO for short, for third place. Notables on the docket, Division II Ohio Valley is at Division III Muskingum, and we've got another split duel as Division III Muhlenberg will face Division II East Stroudsburg. There's an allotment of matches involving NAIA schools on Tuesday that are proliferating across the Midwest. Central Baptist of Arkansas will have the Calumet College of St. Joseph, which is in Indiana, if you're wondering, and Scylla of the NJCAA, also in Indiana, will also join the fun. Thomas Moore's at Midway. They're both from Kentucky. Lincoln from Illinois will continue its maiden voyage into the NAIA with a duel at Missouri Baptist. Fun fact, Missouri Baptist head coach Brian Jackson was a 3-time All-American in 3 different divisions. Yeah, not too many of those. Bluefield will wrestle Southwest Virginia in Richlands, Virginia. Not Richlands, Richlands. While Benedictine, the one in Kansas, will take on William Penn, the school, not the person. NAIA Central Christian will face Cloud County in Concordia, Kansas. And that's all I've got for the time being. But Coker and Newberry scheduled to wrestle on Tuesday. That will be postponed till next month. I brought my newspaper background into wrestling more than 20 years ago. One of those things I used to feature back on Intermat was the weekly How the Top 25 Fared. It was something that the newspapers would run all the time. It ran on the Agate Wire on Sunday nights for the Monday paper for the top 25 AP poll release. Figured I'd do that for wrestling. Yeah, that was cool. Well, I brought it back, mainly as an aid for the coaches poll. Figured if I'm doing it for them, I might as well just post it. That's in the Daily Wrestling News. Despite Duke's tough season thus far, there are at least some good news coming out of Durham. Former Wrestling SID Meredith Reader features Mason Eaglin, a freshman from Port Orchard, Washington, the same hometown as All-American 3 times Mr. Connor Hartman. Last week, 5 of the 6 teams were ranked. Minnesota recapped the return of the Beast Brock Lesnar. The past NCAA champion returned to Minneapolis on Friday as part of the 20th anniversary of his individual title. The Gophers beat Wisconsin, who would later beat Nebraska, making this week's coaches poll absolute shenanigans. USA Wrestling announced it would be holding wrestle-offs for the Pan American Olympic qualifiers in women's freestyle during the WCWA championships next month in Georgia. The state, not the country. Now, this is what's going to make things interesting, because when will they announce the wrestle-offs for the other styles? And you know what I mean. Yeah, credit to that on Blood Round. Those guys pointed that out. Campbell University's Jason Williams, a veteran in the world of sports information, writes up a pretty good feature on the Camels' 2-1 weekend out in Arizona and a quad at Chase Field, home of the Arizona Diamondbacks. That's wacky. Did you know, as we tie this to pro baseball, the camel, that is Campbell's mascot, is named Gaylord, after the famous alum Gaylord Perry, not after a movie with Ben Stiller. Yep, Gaylord Perry, Gaylord the camel. It's a fighting camel. Camel spit at you. Among the stories I'm featuring in the local newspaper today in the Daily Wrestling News, O'Keefe on the Winchester Stars feature Sharando High School senior Colton Foltz. Not Colton Schultz. Same high school, though, as Virginia Tech heavyweight John Borst, which is cool. He's coached by Brian Kibler, who wrestled at Strasburg, which, according to Earl Smith of the Open Mat, isn't cool. Let's remember, Earl went to Manassas Park. Let the hate flow. Anyway, just a little local Q&A. On the network, we have a new show. It's called Forward. It's been released by the Wisconsin Wrestling Federation and state coach Scott Cleaver, as well as River Falls High School head coach and longtime women's wrestling coach Kevin Black. This will start showing up on Apple Podcasts and other podcast directories in the next day or so. PA Power also released its latest college podcast with American head wrestling coach Teague Moore. And that's about all I've got. There's also that top 25 thing. That is in the blog section and also in the main slider on Matt Talk Online. You can get to read those stories and more from Matt Talk Online's daily wrestling newsletter. Sign up for free at matttalkonline.com/news and get today's top wrestling stories from around the world delivered to your inbox for free every single morning. The Matt Talk Online daily wrestling newsletter is sponsored by Resolite. If you'd like to support the show and all the on-demand audio offerings, free newsletters, and historical research, you can support this program and the network by making a small monthly contribution or one-time donation by going to matttalkonline.com/join the team. Venmo, PayPal, and BuyMeACoffee.com are all accepted. But here's the perk with a monthly Patreon contribution. You get cool perks like Matt Talk Online branded shirts, glasses, and hats, the sport's best digital preview guides, shout-outs on the show, and even a guest spot or pitch your show idea or interview suggestion for a future episode of Short Time. Short Time, as always, is proudly outfitted by Compound Sportswear. And folks, if you've been with me this long, you know you've always got time for Short Time. St. Cloud State extended hits it. Oh, deep breath. St. Cloud State, Wartburg, Grandview, Nassau, McKendree, and Menlo were all winners in their respective divisions. I initially had written individual divisions, but that would make no sense because it's a dual meet tournament now. Respective. Respective. Yes, that's not really what it means to anybody but me. Hey, fun fact. I brought my newspaper back.